Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Wall Street Week. I'm David Westin, bringing you stories of capitalism. When Fed officials made their way to Jackson Hole this week, they were helping support the richest county in the country. We look at how it got that way and what it tells us about the rest of the U.S. economy. Plus, it turns out that news of the death of fossil fuels was greatly exaggerated. We talk with Chevron Chairman and CEO Mike Wirth about the future of his industry and how his big acquisition of Hess sets his company up for what comes next. And Wall Street, or at least part of it, may be moving south. No, not to Miami, but to Dallas. What is the city doing to lure the financial sector? And how far does it have to go to catch New York? But we start with those Fed meetings in Jackson Hole and Chair Powell's remarks. For a review, we turn to former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Raghuram Rajan, now at Chicago's Booth School.
Well, this was a very finely balanced speech. I think he had to emphasize that the Fed is still looking for more data. At the same time, he had to acknowledge the fact that, there's a lot of pressure on the Fed to essentially acquiesce to the government and cut rates. So he had to nod to both sides, saying the Fed will do what it has to do, but it's not ignoring the government. And that's why I think it was actually quite masterful the way he managed to sway expectations slightly more towards a cut, but with a subtle change in words. What he said was, and I'm going to read this, the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance. Note the word may. That means he's not committing to it, but he's saying we're bending a little more towards cutting in September.
So that balance of risk shifting, I think, toward the possibility of a cut, I think specifically with respect to labor. And he did talk about the balance of risk on labor tilting to the downside, even as inflation risk tilts to the upside. What's your take on the shape of the U.S. labor market today?
Well, it does look like it's softening. Now, you don't see layoffs in a big way yet. What you do see is the pace of hiring has been relatively slow, and partly because of the fact that immigration has come down a lot, the labor force is not growing so much. So even with the low pace of hiring, you're not seeing unemployment go up. What that means, I think, from his perspective, is that the labor market is weak enough that he doesn't see a substantial increase because of second-round effects of inflation. Now, this is central bank speak for saying, look, tariffs are going to push inflation up, but what we really worry about is the worker asking for higher wages, which creates more inflation down the line. He discounted that in his speech, saying he doesn't see that will push inflation up because the labor market is relatively weak at this point.
At the same time, we do have core inflation that's well above that 2% target that he reiterated once again. When was the last time that the Federal Reserve cut rates with the core inflation at that level?
Well, it's not just that it is at that level. It is that it hasn't budged downwards for quite some time. In fact, the last readings look like they're going upwards. That was the point where I concluded that he was being quite dovish, because there's no mention of the fact that we haven't seen a downward adjustment in inflation. Typically, central banks cut when they see inflation coming down. That puts a lot of weight on weakness in the labor market, bringing inflation down further into the Fed's comfort zone. There is no evidence for that at this point. It is a hope.
We have ambiguous or maybe even conflicting data on inflation on the one hand, labor on the other, and that's against the backdrop of a fair amount of uncertainty particularly uncertainty because the Trump administration is really quite explicitly trying to change the narrative, particularly with tariffs. What about the risk of tariffs? How much have we seen? How much of a risk does it pose?
Well, we haven't seen a lot, though one should note, and Chair Powell noted, that goods inflation, which was coming down, it was not inflation, the goods prices were coming down, so inflation was negative. That has shifted around to a positive rate of inflation on goods. We still haven't seen a full pass-through of the tariffs into prices. That is coming. And the chair said, look, we think it is going to be a one-off. What we worry about is it either feeding into inflationary expectations, that is, people think inflation is going to be higher, or it feeds into wages through a tight labor market. He discounted the tight labor market issue, but he said inflationary expectations, we're going to be watching that, and we certainly will do what it takes to keep inflationary expectations anchored. Broadly, he seemed to suggest that tariffs were manageable. What he didn't talk about, as we've said before, is that he didn't talk about the fact that inflation is way higher than the Fed should be comfortable with.
As you noted, Professor, he was very careful in saying that the shifting risks not necessarily, but may warrant an adjustment. At the same time, the markets certainly took it as almost a guarantee in September there's going to be a cut. Given where all the data are and what he had to say, what do you think the Fed should be doing?
Well, I think he's bought the Fed some room. What will be critical are the August labor market numbers. If they look as weak as the July numbers looked, the Fed will have a cast iron case for cutting. If, however, you see again a shift back towards higher employment numbers, I think the Fed will really be conflicted at that point.
The part of Chair Powell's speech that got the most attention, certainly from the markets, was the part about what's likely to happen in September, where we are on cutting. But there was another half of the speech which had to do with the so-called framework, which the Fed tends to revisit every 5 years or so. And of course, last time was August of 2020. It was a very different world, as he noted in his speech. What did you take about what he had to say about how they're changing that framework?
Well, it was very interesting. He essentially said we were tackling a problem which no longer is that important, which was the fact that the Fed had been tackling low inflation for a long time. Inflation was lower than where the Fed wanted it to be. And the Fed essentially was at what they call the effective lower bound. It couldn't cut interest rates anymore. And in that kind of environment, really, the objective of the framework that the Fed brought in then was to push inflation up. And just a few months after they brought that new framework in 2020, the problem was exactly the opposite, which is high inflation. And the Fed now had to bring inflation down. And essentially what Chair Powell said was, look, we had the right framework for the wrong problem. And at this point, what we're trying to do is move back to our old framework.
And finally, Professor, this was his last speech, by all appearances, at Jackson Hole. As he noted, it was his 8th straight speech. Reflect on his legacy, and particularly, I really remember, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about hard landing, soft landing, a lot of people saying we're going to have a recession. In retrospect, it looks like the soft landing happened under his watch.
Well, yes, and I think, unfortunately, he will not get as much credit as he should for navigating the Fed through very difficult times towards what seemed like a soft landing at the beginning of this year. Of course, the volatility from the new administration's policies has put that into some question. But from the Fed's perspective, after the sort of mistake that was made in the early days of the pandemic in thinking the inflation then would be transitory, the Fed did a very acceptable job in getting things back into line. So one, he should get more credit for that. The second, I think, is that he's displayed immense calm and equanimity at a time when the Fed has been pummeled by outside forces. I think that's also very creditable, that he has led the Fed from the front, but also shown that, despite all the pressures from outside, he can focus and offer a reasonable view of what a central bank should do. That may also, in the years to come, be seen as a very important legacy. He's led with honor, and he's been very careful, but also, reflected great integrity while leading the Fed.
Up next, we take a closer look at the wealthiest county in the wealthiest country in the world and how it got there. This is a story about America the Beautiful and how the beauty of one particular part of America is way more than just skin deep. Once a year, Jackson Hole, Wyoming is a monetary policy mecca, but the resort town in Teton County is a symbol of the way wealth transforms some parts of a town and how other parts may never change. Michael McKee tells us why.
The wealthiest place in America today is a long way from New York or San Francisco. It's much more famous for its mountains, its bison, and its cowboys than it is for its billionaires. The residents would prefer to keep it that way, but they would also tell you that things are changing here fast.
Me personally, my home has doubled in value in the last 3 years, so my balance sheet is looking good, but my income certainly hasn't doubled in the last 3 years.
Jonathan Schechter runs a think tank and sits on the town council in Jackson, Wyoming, not far from the hotel that hosts Fed Chair Jay Powell and central bankers from around the world every summer.
If you go back and look at Jackson Hole historically, we are a high, isolated mountain valley in the northwest corner of Wyoming. It's been very hard to get here and very hard to get out of once you're here.
The result? An economic transformation over 2 centuries, from trapping to ranching to tourism, as the community's isolation and rugged landscape eventually became a selling point for visitors.
All right, that's what I like to hear.
People would come to visit the national parks. All of Grand Teton National Park and the southern half of Yellowstone are within our county. And then in the early 1960s, the Jackson Hole ski area got started, and that got started actually with a federal government loan that was intended for the most impoverished areas in America because we didn't have anything but a summer economy. The geographic isolation still really affects who we are, our ecosystem, our community, our sense of who we are, but it has much less effect on our economy. So now we have people from around the world who come and live here part-time, full-time. They work from anywhere. So we've really become a hub of remote work.
For decades, it was New York County, which is primarily the island of Manhattan, that led the country in wealth accumulation. But in the early 2000s, Teton County jumped into the lead. That trend has rapidly accelerated in recent years, and New York has tumbled into 4th place since the pandemic. Today, the average per capita income in Teton County is about $500,000 a year.
We're the wealthiest county and the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We also sit at the heart of the greatest intact ecosystem in the lower 48. And if you think about things through the eyes of sustainability, where you have ecological capital, financial capital, and human capital, I don't think there's any place in the world that could compare to here.
Jonathan and others say it is no coincidence that a singular ecosystem and a singular economy go hand in hand. About 97% of the land in Teton County is publicly owned, dedicated to parks and forests. And among those who can afford to live anywhere on the planet, there seems to be a belief that something is special about this territory. But then again, there are plenty of other spectacular places in America, so natural beauty is just one piece of the puzzle here. Another is the tax system.
Phrase is we are an onshore, offshore tax haven. And so we are hands down the most wealth-friendly and income-friendly and wealth preservation-friendly state in the union. No other state comes close.
Low property tax, low sales tax, and zero income tax in Wyoming are strong incentives. But then again, every other county in the state benefits from the same friendly tax regime, and their annual incomes are much closer to the national average. Teton County leaves the others in the dust. So what's the secret ingredient? If it's not just the land or the taxes, maybe it's something else altogether. When in doubt, ask the locals.
It was a small town. Everybody knew everybody here in this town at one time. It was extremely Western.
Philip Wilson is the great-grandson of Sylvester Wilson, who was the first settler to bring his family to the valley in the late 1800s. The town 5 miles west of Jackson still bears his surname. Today, Philip and his family run the Jackson Hole Rodeo, and he says a lot has changed here, even within his lifetime.
When I was younger, basically everybody had cattle ranches. Few dude ranches around, but not a lot of them. And then the hotels started coming in, and tourists started coming in. Everybody that comes to Jackson Hole immediately falls in love with it, wants a piece of it. We want to have them feel part of Jackson Hole when they're here. We want them to feel the atmosphere. That's why here at the rodeo, I even go out in the parking and welcome people that come in. I turn around and shake their hand when they leave.
For Philip Wilson, his family, and so many of the other residents, the cowboy culture is not just for show. They were born into it. But he also says it's no wonder that culture appeals to outsiders and newcomers.
That's what draws people to Jackson Hole. The people that are here are friendly type people. They're outgoing, they're friendly. That's the only way they know how to be, because that's the way they run their lives.
It's a very, very popular. I think it's made it into a lot of the must visit when you come to Jackson Hole type of places.
Among those drawn here by the land and the culture is Kate Moore. Low taxes aren't a motivation for her. She still files in New York, where her work is based. As Chief Investment Officer for Citi Private Bank, she's joined a growing group of people making the move from Wall Street to the West.
I bought my house a little over 7 years ago, so pre-COVID, which was excellent timing given real estate prices. But I've been coming out here for 30 years. My first trip was when I was in high school, actually.
Now, your job is essentially on Park Avenue, but you're splitting your time here.
Yeah, I split my time, and I split my time in my previous role as well. But I think, I'm someone who manages a global team. We're not all in the same location at all times anyway. And, if I'm working the appropriate hours, in this case, East Coast market hours, so I'm up at 4, which can be a little bit tough. I think a lot of the finance people in town do the same thing.
Moore says there's also a deep appreciation for the region's history here. She herself lives in a renovated cabin that was built in 1929. But whether the homes are new or old, one look at real estate prices will give you an idea of just how high the peaks of wealth in Teton County can go.
Our supply is limited here, but demand seems to go up every year.
Brandon Spackman is a local real estate agent, and he currently has the listing for the most expensive property in the area. That's where we met up with him for a tour.
It seems like you have almost an unlimited supply of buyers.
We do. It's a big investment, and a lot of it's just timing in their lives and what they want to do.
When he says big investment, he means it. The River House sits on a 36-acre property in Wilson, Wyoming, the town founded by Philip Wilson's great-grandfather. It's about 10 miles from downtown Jackson and is currently listed at $60 million.
Obviously, you have a room like this, you walk into the room and it helps sell the house. You want to live in a place like this. Now, how many houses are in this price range?
Over 20 million. A lot of properties are in the 20 to 30 range.
Properties like River House form the higher end of the range in a place where private land is hard to come by. But as the ultra-premium market goes up, so does the rest of it. Some people here say the billionaires are pushing out the millionaires, not to mention those in lower income brackets who sometimes commute from across the border in Idaho. And Jonathan Schechter thinks the wealth divide could become a bigger problem under the latest federal legislation.
You're number one in per capita income, but also number one in income disparity.
Yes, we have roughly 90% of our income, a little north of that, is earned by the highest earners. So maybe 15% of our community earns roughly 90% of our income, leaving about 10% of our income for the other 85%. The big, beautiful bill disproportionately benefits the wealthy. A lot of these cuts that are going to occur, a lot of cuts in social services programs and other programs are going to disproportionately harm those of lower income. And when you have the greatest income inequality, the greatest income disparity of any county in America, then I'm concerned about my constituents, my friends, my colleagues, my neighbors.
Philip Wilson's rodeo employs locals, and the lack of affordable housing means he has to run a leaner business.
We'd like to have 80 employees here. We're not up to where we need to be, but we make do. There's not enough people here in the valley that live here to work here, because most of them live outside of here. So when you come to the rodeo, we're in the evening. You know, they're either 100 miles away or 60 miles away down in Star Valley.
Despite the challenges facing Jackson Hole, its workers and its residents say the sense of community remains strong here. And that's what Philip Wilson hopes to preserve, bringing the ultra-wealthy along for the ride.
If you're going to come to the rodeo, we want you to have a good time, because we're going to have a good time. So when you come here, we try to show them the friendly type of atmosphere. That's why we do so much handshaking here at this rodeo.
And there's a cowboy Western culture in Jackson.
Oh, there is. There is here, you know. The cowboy culture is, I'll tell you one thing that a cowboy does, is every time he sees you, he shakes your hand. If he sees you tomorrow, he shakes your hand. If he sees you tomorrow afternoon, he shakes your hand.
I mean, it is the most amazing community ever. I can tell you, I have incredibly close friends that are fishing guides and that are self-made billionaires. And frankly, some of those people I didn't even know they were really wealthy, because everyone drives the same like F-150 and wears the same kind of jeans around town. It is a place where there is an enormous amount of wealth, but showing that wealth is not part of normal behavior.
Jonathan Schechter says he hopes the community spirit and a respect for the land will be constant even in the face of economic change. But he also says they need to be protected and are no longer as certain as they once were.
You just needed to have that potluck kind of church social mentality, because there were too few of us and we had to rely on each other in a very harsh and extreme place. And so we can't take a lot of these things for granted. We can't take for granted transmitting our cultural values from one generation to another. We can't take for granted transmitting a healthy ecosystem from one generation to another. If we lose that, then we've lost something really special.
Hi, friendly. Whoa, we got a good start, a good camp.
These worries seem far away on a Friday night at the rodeo. A view from the stands shows that although much has changed here, much abides. The story of Jackson Hole is one of American ideals. The wealthy and the ultra-wealthy of today may see what the Wilsons saw when they arrived in Teton County over 100 years ago, an American frontier that can share the bounty of the land with its people. But more than ever before, those who live here will have to reconcile the values of capitalism with a culture born of cowboys and unforgiving landscapes, a culture which may be their greatest asset of all.
Coming up, fresh off his transformative acquisition of Hess, we talk with Chevron CEO Mike Wirth about what it means for his company and what it tells us about his industry overall. This is a story about growth and renewal. Not long ago, all the talk was about the looming end of fossil fuels, but now it looks like much of that talk was premature. One of those who was steering his global energy company through the ups and the downs is Mike Wirth, chairman and CEO of Chevron, who says that what the industry needed all along was balance.
Whenever you talk about energy, there are really three things that matter, and this is whether you're a company or a country. Affordability, because energy that people can't afford doesn't change lives. Reliability, because reliability enables an economy to be built. And then protecting the environment. And in policy discussions or in business strategy, and if we focus only on one of those, we suboptimize on the other two. Well, I think there was a genuine hope to transition to a carbon-free economy very rapidly. And I think what that led people to miss was the reasons why the energy system we have today is in place.
Whenever you have balance, there are some trade-offs. How do you minimize the damage to the climate while pursuing the other goals?
The first thing you do is you focus on efficiency. The best way to find new energy is not to use energy wastefully that we have today. And so efficiency in industrial facilities, in transportation, in manufacturing, all really, really essential. The second thing that we're focused on is investing in technologies that we think hold the promise to reduce the carbon intensity of energy use in the future. So hydrogen is one example, renewable fuels is a second, geothermal is a third. Earlier this year, we started up our largest renewable diesel facility. We're the second largest producer of renewable fuels in the United States. Later this year, we will start up the largest green hydrogen facility in the United States using solar power to turn water into hydrogen. And that will have the storage capacity equivalent to 3 times all the grid-installed batteries in the entire United States.
As we talk right now, it looks like the demand for fossil fuels will continue as far as the eye can see. Do you think it peaks at some point?
Demand last year was the highest that it's ever been. Demand this year is up versus last year. Demand next year will be up again. Again, not because of anything our industry is doing, but the population on the planet continues to grow. There will come a time when the population on the planet plateaus, when development will have largely occurred for most of the less developed part of the world, and efficiency will have offset some of that growth. Different models give you different assumptions on when that will occur, but the important thing is once we reach that point, it's not like demand for oil will then drop off a cliff. The big consumers of oil are airplanes, ships, long-haul trucking. And so even as we find these new technologies becoming more competitive, we're going to have existing consumers of energy that will last for a long time to come. This is going to be measured in decades.
The global demand for oil is something over 100 million barrels a day. How long do you think that can sustain?
Well, we're closer to 105 million barrels a day today. We'll probably be close to 110 million barrels a day by the end of this decade. And then, some forecasts would have it beginning to plateau. Some would have it continuing to grow. OPEC has a growth out through 2050. The IEA shows a plateau beginning in 2030. Our view is probably somewhere in between those two. But that's still an enormous amount of demand in the world to be met.
Chevron specifically has positioned itself recently to be in a position to supply some of that with your Hess acquisition. Explain why that strategically was so important to Chevron and to you.
Well, we've got a strong growth profile through the rest of this decade. The Permian Basin just hit 1 million barrels a day. We've had global records the last couple of quarters for production. Hess brings with it a nice growth profile that extends beyond the next few years as we reach maturity on some of our big projects that have been starting up. Hess has some very talented people in exploration who've been quite involved in the identification and appraisal of the resource in Guyana, which is the largest new discovery in the world over the last couple of decades. So we're going to bring their talent, their experience, their insights, and blend it with ours. And as we move forward, we've got acreage around the world, and we're going to have some, a stronger team as we move forward to challenge some of our conventional thinking, maybe help us think about these opportunities differently, and I'm confident we'll get better results.
Can you get along with Exxon as a venture partner down in Guyana?
We partner to share risk, to share costs. It's quite common, particularly on large-scale developments. We put our people together and we get the best out of the people from organizations that bring different experiences together. And we've got great respect for all the companies that we work with. I would fully expect that our team will be good partners with Exxon and vice versa in Guyana. Many of the people that will be working on this project are the Hess people who have now joined Chevron.
Chevron is much more than an oil company, it's a gas company too. Let's talk about natural gas. There was a time that was such a sort of a bridge energy, getting to solar and renewables. Is that still true?
I actually think it's becoming more true once again, or more recognized. As you bring wind and solar into an electricity grid, they have great strengths. Once the capital's been invested, the marginal cost is very low. but they're not good at providing baseload capacity because they're variable with the wind and the sunshine. You can't really turn the sun up brighter or make the wind blow. It is what it is. And so you need other sources of supply to provide level loading for the grid. Natural gas is ideal for that. It's much lower emitting than coal.
Give us a sense of how you think Chevron can help really contribute the power that we need for those huge data centers.
The demand is coming. In fact, it's already here. And we're talking to the biggest companies in the world that are investing in building these models. The two constraints that they have right now are chips, the GPUs that go into the data centers, and electricity. The US is in a race with China for leadership in AI, and both countries have strong technology bases and strong energy resources. The challenge for us in the US is to mobilize our energy to support the growth in power demand. We've got a grid that is challenged in terms of putting all that power through the grid. So what we're looking at doing is building large-scale power generation off the grid where we can go fast, we can deliver large scale, we can take advantage of the abundant, low-cost gas resource in this country. So we're in deep discussions with several of the biggest companies working on this.
You have announced already a deal with Vernova and with engine number one. Where is that project? When will it first be online somewhere?
So this is what I'm referring to. We've got a site identified, a primary site. We've got some other sites that we're working on as well. We've got 7 of GE Vernova's largest turbines coming with delivery beginning next year. So this will be over 4 gigawatts of power generation.
When you talk about permitting, I do think about governments. Federal, certainly, with the administration, you say, but also state. When you talk about balance, how do you strike a balance between, let me pick names, Gavin Newsom on the one hand in California and Donald Trump in Washington on the other? They don't seem to see eye to eye on energy policy.
They probably don't see eye to eye on a number of things. Energy policy being one of them. And certainly we've got a long history in California, a large footprint in California. But the policies of the state have been designed to discourage investment in the traditional energy system and encourage investment into renewables and the next generation. We talked earlier about balance. My belief is California does not have the balance right. California is trying to convert the supply side too fast, and the demand side hasn't adjusted yet, and that runs the risk of creating shortages. I think President Trump is more of a believer in all of the above. He's certainly been an advocate for oil and gas. And I think his policy approach is more market-oriented and likely to yield the kinds of results that we're talking about in terms of competitiveness.
Give us a sense how you became CEO. What brought you to Chevron to begin with?
I had a degree in chemical engineering, and I got a summer job where I worked in engineering and really enjoyed it. In the early 1980s, in my early 20s, I decided to go to California. I landed with Standard Oil of California, which is what our company was known as at the time. And I found myself working with incredibly talented people on important projects around the world that blended engineering and technology with economics and business, and then with this geopolitical overlay that we're talking about. And 43 years later, I'm still doing it.
Looking back on your career, was there a formative moment that you look back on and draw from as you deal with crises or difficult situations?
I'll tell you the most recent one that I learned a lot from is COVID. And I had some insights that this thing was perhaps going to be worse than most people thought. And I was able to use that to begin to mobilize a response at our company before the rest of the world really recognized what was going on. One of the first things that I did is I called my 3 immediate predecessors, each of whom served as CEO for about a decade, and all of whom lived within a stone's throw of where I lived. And they had gone through wars, they had gone through terrorist attacks, financial crises, and they all had experience on dealing with an unexpected black swan type of event. And they were incredibly generous with their reflections on what they would have done differently, their suggestions to me on what I should do in response to it. And it was nice to not have to figure it out all myself.
You've been CEO for a while. What is there left for you to accomplish?
Well, we've got immediate integration of an acquisition. We're going through a large corporate restructuring, which is rewiring business processes and where work gets done. We've got a contract to operate in Kazakhstan that it runs out in the next few years. Those would be some things that are on my list that still need to be taken care of.
Coming up, the Lone Star State is giving New York's Wall Street a run for its money. We look at what Dallas is doing to become its own version of Lower Manhattan. This is a story about ambition. They say everything is bigger in Texas, but for the Lone Star State, the status quo is not big enough, particularly when it comes to the financial sector. Our colleague Scarlett Fu went to Dallas to see what it is doing to attract Wall Street business and whether it can handle the growth.
When we first moved to Dallas, we lived across the street from the kids' elementary school. And I'll never forget walking through the park with the ducks, and it was like a fairy tale.
In Dallas, I think there's no limit.
Dallas is a great place to be.
Dallas has long been the financial hub of Texas. Since the pandemic, it's become a leading financial and innovation center in the nation. According to the Census Bureau, Dallas-Fort Worth-Arlington was the third largest gaining metro area in the U.S. from July 2023 to July 2024, adding almost 178,000 residents.
I moved for work. I had a great opportunity to join an innovative company that was wanting to grow from local to global. I was 15 years an entrepreneur in Los Angeles, and truly 30,000 miles a year in a car, trying to get home with the kids, all that good stuff, and I just thought there had to be a better way. And we just started looking, and a friend called me from here in Dallas. He says, you've got to come out and take a look and see all the things that are going on here. And I did, and here we are, 11 years later.
Sarah and Ryan Brown ditched California palm trees for Texas tumbleweeds 10 years ago, settling down in the Dallas suburb of Highland Park.
I see an influx of tech and tech-focused entrepreneurs and operators more and more every day. It's a hot topic here, and I think a lot of it is also coming because of the investments that are coming here. As a tech entrepreneur or someone in tech, you don't have to live out of your car in Silicon Valley.
This relative affordability makes the northern Texas region a magnet for both young people at the start of their careers as well as established professionals. Dallas now has the second most finance jobs in the U.S., ahead of both Chicago and L.A. And while it might remain some way off New York, Mayor Eric Johnson sees his city as more than just an upstart.
The future is Dallas, because I think this is where the growth in the country is occurring in terms of business. The Sun Belt is the fastest growing part of the United States. Texas is the fastest growing part of the Sun Belt. Dallas is the fastest growing part of Texas. If you want to be successful, you go where the action is headed, not where it is. I think the action in this country is headed to this part of the United States, and you can't be in a better place than Dallas.
Financial firms are leading the action in Dallas, from Wells Fargo topping out construction of a $500 million campus in the inner city suburb of Irving, to Goldman Sachs building its second biggest U.S. headquarters downtown, to the New York Stock Exchange moving its Chicago branch to Dallas, culminating in what some are calling Y'all Street.
Folks have been trying to figure out what to call it, right? You had the Texas Stock Exchange, Texie, and then all of a sudden Y'all Street came in. I think it's going to stick. I think it's great.
I still would tell my bankers, follow the money. That's exactly what everybody's doing. The money's here.
Elaine Agather is chairman of the Dallas region for J.P. Morgan Chase. After starting her banking career in New York, followed by stints in London and San Francisco, she returned home to Texas in 1984.
As I grew with the firm, the state grew. I've literally watched it happen. And with today, 32,000 employees, we have more employees in the state of Texas than any other region for J.P. Morgan.
Including New York.
Including New York.
Agatha has seen the city of Dallas grow in stature in the financial world.
In the 1980s, Michael Lewis coined the term equities in Dallas and made that into a shorthand for the least desirable assignment in an investment bank. The equivalent of being out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Does
anymore.
Anyone, does anyone reference that?
No.
No one says that?
No one says that anymore. But I remember that, but no one says that anymore.
Why do you think that is?
I think because of the growth. I think the wealth that has been generated here. Today, we are so diverse as an economy. I mean, we got smart. It's everything from tech, food, retail, huge retail. But that diversity, it really attracted the growth, that people didn't have to just be an oil and gas guy to move down here. Years ago, you really needed to be in New York for a big job. That has all changed. We have lots of jobs here in Dallas that are national jobs.
Dallas has a lot of things going for it as a city. Number one, there's the infrastructure here. Two, it's a very business-friendly environment. And three, there's that tremendous depth of a talent pool. Young professionals are coming here in droves. Just anecdotally, we recently had a post for a new analyst position and had over 200 applicants within 24 hours, and all from outside of the state of Texas. Really now, this is a career move. It is the career move for young people to come to Dallas to build something.
JP Morgan isn't the only big bank betting on Dallas.
I believe you can almost see Goldman Sachs' new headquarters from your office here.
Oh, right there. Yes, I look at it every day. It's very annoying. No, I'm teasing. And then in B of A, and you just see this along this park, the growth that has happened. And it's attracted many financial type institutions.
The opportunity set here in Dallas, especially in the wealth management side, is tremendous. The number of households in our target demographic has grown 20% year over year in the last 1 year alone, and it's been consistent over the last 5. So I just can't imagine a better place to do what I'm doing.
Ashley Herbst is the head of the Dallas market at JP Morgan Private Bank. She is one of the city's many recent transplants.
We moved here for my job. The opportunity to run JP Morgan's private bank in Dallas was an absolute dream come true. It was a dream job, no-brainer for our family. It was definitely not easy. The career decision was easy. The personal decision was harder. It's just been an incredible place to build a career for me. Like I love my job. I can't wait to get to work every day, but my family's happy. And that's really important to me. And I think it's a good testament to what living in Dallas is like.
Dallas absolutely can handle the population growth we're experiencing.
Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson is quick to compare his city with New York.
This has been a long-term, conscious effort on the part of the city and our business community to make sure Dallas continues to be a truly pro-business city. It's not just rhetoric. We are a sanctuary city from socialism in this country. This is a place where we still actually view business and people who create jobs and people who contribute to the economic growth of the city. That's a good thing. They're not the enemy. We're not trying to punish them. We don't vilify them. It's just not in our DNA. Like Dallas is a city that gave the world Texas Instruments, gave the world Southwest Airlines. A lot of our great Fortune 500 companies started here. We have a culture here that really respects business.
So when it comes to financial firms, what do you think is Dallas's biggest draw to that sector?
We don't really feel the need to throw incentives around to get people to invest in Dallas and to move to Dallas and to relocate significant operations to Dallas. We will target a big fish like a Goldman Sachs, because then the other companies will follow. You'll create an incentive for other financial service firms to be in that same ecosystem with a company like a Goldman Sachs, but you also will get the accounting firms, the law firms, and it becomes sort of this virtuous cycle. So the Goldman Sachs deal is a great example of a case where they're going to invest over $500 million in an 800,000 square foot development that's going to create 5,000 jobs, and it's just going to be transformative for our city.
Chris Kleiner leads Hunt Realty, which is one of the developers behind the Goldman Project. Hunt Realty is also working on a massive development to the north of Dallas with other marquee names, the Professional Golfers Association of America and Universal.
Fields is our 2,500-acre development in Frisco. It's a gem amidst all the unique, positive things going on in Frisco and Prosper and other parts north. And there was the opportunity to master plan something really special. We set our sights to create something different, something world-class. The inclusion of 26 miles of trails, the inclusion of water, the inclusion of parks, different price point homes, very unique mixed-use retail, residential, office development. Mass attracts mass, and we're over 1,000 homes being built. We've got great residential home developer partners. Universal has bought 100 acres. They're going to be opening a very unique ages 3 to 11 theme park here in 26. University of North Texas has a Frisco campus that is adjacent to our site. We're thrilled with the potential, and we're seeing that come to life.
Just northeast of Fields lies Prosper, another small town in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that is pitching families on its affordability and quality of life.
We're saying here's this community that we have awesome amenities, great school district, you've got space to meet people, we have lifestyle programs. It doesn't matter where you come from. We get a lot of people in from the West Coast. Toyota relocation, there's been other Fortune 500 relocations.
David Blom is president of Telus Group. Its Windsong Ranch project in Prosper is now home to some of Prosper's 40,000 plus residents. From 2000 to 2025, Prosper's population has grown by 2,000%.
It's become more diverse, and diverse is probably an overused term, but with corporate relocations from the West Coast, we've had people come in from the Midwest, from the Northeast.
The risk is all this growth makes Dallas and its surrounding suburbs less affordable.
If there was any issue that our community is facing is that the housing prices are going up, so less families are able to afford it, so we have more seats in our schools. So that could be two ways, right? We don't have enough funding for our school, but we don't have crowded schools either, so I guess it's a balance.
New residents also point out a downside of master-planned communities: the limited outdoor public spaces, especially when compared with the natural landscapes and wonders along the coasts.
I think it's really difficult to be a weekend warrior here on the recreation side. And when we lived in California, we're at the ocean, we're at the beach, we're in the mountains, we were doing everything outside. There's not a national forest here. There's no Bureau of Land Management here. And so everything is very privatized. So I do miss the ability to just get outside and maybe get lost.
The growth of Dallas can't be questioned, but Y'all Street is not yet a replacement for Wall Street. While firms are adding middle and back office jobs there, the seats of power still reside in New York. Jamie Dimon and the CEOs of JP Morgan's different businesses aren't likely to move from the firm's brand new headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, but Dallas is heading in the right direction.
The growth just keeps happening. Our Plano office was about 6,000 when we built it, and then we kept adding to it. You need an area of the country that can get to both coasts quickly. And this center of the country is a huge advantage. Jamie used to tease about the headquarters will be here. No, it's in New York, make no mistake. But he is very proud of Texas.
I want people to know that Dallas really is a place where the American dream is still very much alive and well, and it's not rhetoric. Like, we really are a place where people can come who are not from here. We welcome outsiders. It's a place that really embraces energy and hard work, that can-do spirit we have. When we see it in other folks, we embrace it.
How long will it take for Dallas to win as a financial center?
I think we're winning. I really think we're winning now with the growth. There are still people that have not been to Texas that might have kind of an image in their head. So I think that over the next 10 years, as more people understand the sophistication, I think that image of Texas will continue to change.
That does it for us here at Wall Street Week. I'm David Westin. See you next week for more stories of capitalism.